My name is Rod Dreher. I am an American journalist and an author. The last two books I've written are Live Not by Lies and The Benedict Option. And I'm here to talk about the role of Christianity and culture in the renewal of the West.
Los biólogos más avispados detallan un crecimiento inusual en el número de avestruces. Sus rutas migratorias parecen haber evolucionado, lejos de los tigres y baobabs de la sabana africana. Hoy se avistan avestruces en el bar de la esquina, en el Congreso de los Diputados o incluso haciendo cola en misa. Eso sí, todos comparten una misma característica. Ante el conflicto, esconden la cabeza bajo tierra. Los científicos llaman a este fenómeno el efecto avestruz. ¿Tiene solución? Nuestra propuesta: sacar la cabeza del suelo, llamar a los expertos y responder de cara a los debates que se nos plantean como sociedad, sean sobre la vida y la muerte, el sexo de los ángeles o la mejor manera de cocinar un chuletón. ¿Te sumas?
You know, as long as I have been alive, we have been engaged in a culture war in the United States, and I think it's spreading across the West. It's not a war that I'm excited about, but it's one that has come to us as Christians. We can't avoid it. We want there to be peace, but in my country at least, and I think it's coming to Europe, the left has become so intolerant and militant. And so we Christians have to stand up for our own beliefs and insist on them, insist on respect. Well, I think Christians and even people who aren't Christians, who just want to protect freedom of expression, protect the family, protect the church, and so forth, need to be aware of how totalitarian this ideology is and the need to fight this culture war even if you don't want to. Do you know, I first got the idea for Live Not by Lies 6 or 7 years ago when people who had emigrated to America from the Soviet Union or the Soviet bloc, they came to the West to escape communism. Today, they're saying that the things they see happening around us remind them of what they left behind. Well, that seemed exaggerated to me because we don't have gulags, we don't have any of the things that the Soviet Union did. But the more I talked to them, the more I realized they were seeing things that I was blind to, that we in the West are blind to. Well, what are they seeing? They're seeing the emergence of a system in which you cannot disagree with the ruling ideology. In my country, and I hear also in Spain in some ways, if you disagree with gender ideology, that you can be canceled. You can lose your job, you can lose your friends, you can lose your status, you can lose your business. If you don't agree with critical race theory, same thing. There is no discussion about this. It is the ideology that you must accept if you want to be part of society. This is what totalitarianism does. A totalitarian society is a society in which there is only one ideology permitted and every aspect of life is made ideological. Well, we in the West have this historical idea from the experience of Soviet communism that totalitarianism must involve the gulag, secret police, and so forth. What's happening now is the emergence of a new, softer form of totalitarianism, and it's not coming through the state alone. It's coming through the ideological capture of private institutions, most importantly in my country, capitalism. Major companies now have become totally woke, as we say, and they are driving a lot of this. But also the media, universities, law, medicine, sports, even the U.S. military has all been captured by this ideology.
Companies not only celebrate the month, but actively market around it as well. There's a term for that: rainbow capitalism. Walmart and Target have pride-related ads. IKEA.
In the past, the communism was the totalitarianism of George Orwell in 1984. But what we're dealing with now is more like the totalitarianism of Aldous Huxley and Brave New World. It's a totalitarianism in which we surrender our liberties in exchange for comfort and for entertainment and from the security of all that, of not having to be confronted with anything that disturbs us. The American intellectual James Poulos calls this the pink police state. What he means by that is it's a sort of therapeutic totalitarianism where we really hate the idea of liberty because it means we have to be responsible, and that terrifies us, so we surrender to the authorities. Well, this is the challenge that we face today. So many people, especially young people, are so terrified of being uncomfortable that they're willing to accept anything as long as the world can be guaranteed to be a safe space. But that's not reality. Wokeness is a substitute religion for people who don't have a belief in God. This became obvious to me as I was researching my book, Live Not by Lies. I was reading about the Russian Revolution and how the Bolshevik movement was something that for atheists who needed to fill the God-shaped hole in their souls. And so they took these political beliefs and they made of them a sort of religion. And we see the same thing with wokeness. Wokeness is not as strong intellectually as Marxism, but it has the same qualities of it. People think that the people who adhere to wokeness, they believe it gives them a sense of meaning, it gives them a sense of purpose, what to do with their lives, and it gives them a sense of solidarity. These are things that traditionally come with religious belief. Well, these people don't have religious belief. In America, the young have been raised in a very secular society, and they need to feel a sense of meaning and purpose. Wokeness gives it to them. And it's also the case that you cannot argue with them. In a normal political environment, you can have a dispute, a rational discussion about principles, not with the woke. They insist on it dogmatically. They're every bit as dogmatic as the Grand Inquisitor in the Spanish Inquisition or the religious police in Saudi Arabia. You know, this has been the most common misunderstanding of the Benedict option, usually from people who never read it. They think I'm saying we have to head for the hills and hide out. No, it's not possible to escape what's happening around us. My idea is that if we as Christians are going to meet the challenges of living in this post-Christian world as faithful Christians, then we have to come closer together to form stronger communities and to study our faith more, practice our faith more, learn the practices of Christian discipleship in a very focused way, like the monks. Monks and nuns who are cloistered are called to be away from the world. We're not. We are in the world. But if we are going to be in the world as faithful Christians, then we have to remind ourselves what it means to be a faithful Christian, what it means to live as a faithful Christian. What are the differences between life as a Christian and life as a non-Christian? We have to understand our faith better so we can present Jesus Christ to the world as he really is. Right now, the world is so powerful, and the values of the post-Christian world are so powerful that if we as Christians aren't sure about what we believe, and if we're not prepared to even to suffer for the sake of those truths, then we're going to be assimilated into the world. You know, one of the chief aspects of totalitarianism is a sense of atomization in society. When I was working on Live Not by Lies, I read a famous book by Hannah Arendt, the great political philosopher of the 20th century. Her first book was called The Origins of Totalitarianism. And in this book, which she published in the 1950s, she went back to examine Germany before the Nazis and Russia before the communists to find out how were those societies prepared to accept totalitarianism.
Was damals in der Welle von Gleichschaltung, die ja ziemlich freiwillig war, jedenfalls noch nicht unter dem Druck des Terrors, vor allen Dingen aber in dem plötzlichen Verlassen. Es war, als ob sich ein leerer Raum um einen bildete.
The most important aspect, she found, was a sense of loneliness, mass loneliness and atomization. People felt so far apart from each other, they didn't know where to turn for a sense of meaning or community, and these pseudo-religions, Nazism and communism, came in and gave them everything they thought they needed. So we have to push for community. Normally, in the past, before the age of technology, community was something that seemed natural. It isn't natural anymore. We can't just sit back and wait for community to happen. We have to push forward for it. And community is the only way we know, we can know who we are, what our responsibilities are to each other in relationship, and also in relationship to God. I dedicated my book, Live Not by Lies, to the memory of a Catholic priest named Father Tomislav Kolakovich. Father Kolakovic was a Croatian Jesuit who was doing anti-Nazi work in Zagreb in the Second World War. He got a tip that the Gestapo was coming for him, so he fled to his mother's country, Slovakia, and began to teach at the Catholic University. He told the students, I have good news and bad news. The good news is the Nazis are going to lose this war. The bad news is the Soviets are going to be ruling this country when it's over, and the first thing they're going to do is persecute the church. So what Father Kolakovic did was to establish these small groups of Catholic students who would come together to pray and to debate what was happening in their society and then decide what are we going to do about it. Not just talk, but act, then go out and do it. Within 2 years, these groups had spread all over Slovakia, and the young people, young Catholics, were talking about it and getting ready for persecution. The bishops of Slovakia chastised him and said, Father, stop scaring people. It will never happen here. But Father Kolakovic knew the communist mindset, so he kept working. After the Iron Curtain fell over that country, everything happened exactly as Father Kolakovic said. But because he and his followers had built these small communities of faithful Catholics, the underground church structure was ready. It started with communities of young people who were completely committed to God and to each other through Christ. We have to have this today. I believe that we in the West, in Europe, and in North America are in a Kolakovic moment. We don't have any time to waste.